The last letter was the one that changed everything. It arrived at Bruce Springsteen's management office in New York on a Wednesday morning in March 1984, handwritten in pencil on wide-ruled notebook paper, and it said, "I guess you're probably too busy to write back. That's okay. I understand. I just wanted you to know that your music helped me not be so sad after my dad died. Thank you for making it. Your friend, Danny Kowalczyk, age 9." It was the 93rd letter Danny had sent. Danny Kowalczyk lived in a small house on Birchwood Lane in Ainsworth, Nebraska, population 1,900, with his mother Carol and his younger sister Beth, who was 6 years old and still sometimes asked when their father was coming home. Danny had stopped asking that question in October 1982, when he was 8 years old, 3 weeks after his father Robert had died of a sudden heart attack at the age of 34, while driving home from a hardware store on a Saturday afternoon. The car had drifted to the shoulder of Route 20 and come to a gentle stop against a fence post, and Robert Kowalczyk had been gone before anyone found him. Danny was in the backyard throwing a baseball against the garage door when his mother came outside. He knew from the way she walked across the yard toward him, the particular quality of her movement, the way she was holding herself together from the inside, that something had broken that was not going to be fixed. He did not throw the baseball again for almost a year. Carol Kowalczyk was 32 years old when her husband died, and she handled what followed with a quiet competence that Danny would spend a long time understanding and an even longer time appreciating. She went back to work full-time at the county administrative office. She kept the house. She made sure Beth knew she was loved and that Danny knew he was not responsible for holding anything together, even though he had already decided, in the private interior way that 9-year-olds decide things, that he was. The music came into Danny's life in the winter of 1982, 2 months after his father died, through a cassette tape that belonged to his uncle Jerry. Jerry was Robert's younger brother, 30 years old, unmarried, who drove a truck and came through Ainsworth every few weeks and sometimes stayed for dinner. He was not a man of many words, but he was a man who paid attention, and he had noticed that Danny was disappearing into himself in the specific way that quiet children disappear, not dramatically, not with any visible distress, but slowly, like a signal getting weaker. One evening after dinner, Jerry had handed Danny a cassette tape without explaining what it was or why he was giving it. "Just listen to it," Jerry said. "Some of it might mean something." The tape was a copy of "The River" by Bruce Springsteen. Danny took it to his room, put it in the small tape player he kept on his dresser, and lay on his bed in the dark, listening to it from beginning to end without moving. He was 9 years old. He did not understand all of it, but some of it he understood completely, in the way that grief makes children understand things they have no business understanding yet. The songs about fathers and sons. The songs about things ending. The songs about love that doesn't protect you from loss, but keeps you company inside of it. He listened to the tape every night for 3 weeks. Then he did something that he could not have explained if anyone had asked him to. He wrote Bruce Springsteen a letter. He found the address of Springsteen's management company in a music magazine that his uncle Jerry had left behind. He sat at the kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon and wrote 3 paragraphs in pencil on notebook paper. He told Springsteen that his dad had died and that the music helped. He said he didn't know why it helped, but it did. He signed it, Your friend Danny Kowalczyk, age 9, because that was how he signed things, with his age included, because he had learned that adults sometimes took things more seriously when they knew how old you were. He mailed it on a Monday morning on his way to school and did not think about it again, or tried not to. No reply came. He had not expected one, not really. He knew that famous people got a lot of letters, and that there was no particular reason to think his would be different from anyone else's. But the following Sunday, at the kitchen table, he found himself writing another one. He wasn't sure why. It felt like continuing a conversation that the other person didn't know they were having. He wrote about school, about his sister Beth, about the baseball he still wasn't throwing against the garage door. He wrote about a song on the tape that he had been thinking about all week. He signed it the same way. He mailed it Monday morning. The following Sunday, he wrote another one. He did this every week for nearly 2 years. 93 letters sent from Ainsworth, Nebraska, to an address in New York City. None of them answered. His mother knew about the letters. She had found the magazine with the address and understood immediately what Danny was doing, and she had made the quiet decision to say nothing about it, neither to encourage nor to discourage, because she recognized that her son had found a way to talk about his father's death that did not require anyone to talk back, and that this was probably what he needed. The letters changed over time. Early ones were mostly about grief, in the indirect way that 9-year-olds write about grief, by writing about everything adjacent to it, everything that had changed, everything that was different now. Later ones were more like dispatches from a life continuing. Danny made the baseball team at school. Beth had lost 2 teeth. His mother had gotten a small raise. He had listened to the tape so many times that it was beginning to wear out, and he was worried about what would happen when it finally stopped working. The 93rd letter was the last one because Danny had decided it would be, not because he had given up or because the letters had stopped meaning something, but because he had turned 11 by then, and he had begun to understand, with the particular clarity of a child who has had to grow up faster than he planned, that you cannot keep asking for something from someone who does not know you exist. He had written the last letter as a goodbye, of sorts. A thank you and a closing. Something that felt like an ending he had chosen rather than one that happened to him. He mailed it on a Monday morning and walked to school and did not look back. What Danny did not know, what he had no way of knowing, was that the 93rd letter had arrived at Springsteen's management office at the same time that someone on the staff had finally begun going through a backlog of fan mail that had accumulated over the previous 18 months. The office received thousands of letters a month. Most were processed by staff, cataloged, and responded to with a form letter or a signed photograph. But occasionally, something in the pile was set aside. The 93rd letter was set aside. It was set aside because of the way it ended, because of the sentence about being too busy, because of the particular dignity of a child releasing you from an obligation you never knew you had. The staff member who read it brought it to the attention of Springsteen's manager, who brought it to the attention of Springsteen himself. Springsteen read the letter on a Thursday evening in March 1984. He then asked his manager to find the other 92. It took 3 weeks. They were not easy to find. They had been filed in various places over the course of 18 months, some cataloged by date, some by state, some placed in a general pile that required going through by hand. But they found them, all 92. Springsteen read them in order over the course of 2 evenings in his house in New Jersey. He did not tell anyone what he was planning to do. He asked his manager for the return address on the letters. Then, on a Saturday morning in April 1984, he got in a car. He drove to Nebraska. It was not a short drive. It was approximately 18 hours from central New Jersey to Ainsworth, Nebraska, through Pennsylvania and Ohio and Indiana and Illinois and Iowa, and into the flat, wide openness of the Nebraska sandhills. He stopped once, overnight, at a motel in Iowa. He arrived in Ainsworth on a Sunday afternoon, following directions he had written by hand on a piece of paper. He found Birchwood Lane without difficulty. He parked in front of the small house with the pale yellow siding and the basketball hoop above the garage door. He sat in the car for a moment. Then he got out and walked up the front path and knocked on the door. Carol Kowalczyk answered. She recognized him immediately. She stood in the doorway for a moment without saying anything, and then she said the only thing she could think of, which was, "You drove?" "I drove," Springsteen said. She let him in. Danny was in the backyard. He had gone back to throwing the baseball against the garage door sometime around the previous spring. Not dramatically, not as a moment he had marked or noted, but simply one afternoon when he had picked it up and thrown it, and it had felt okay. Carol went to the back door and called him in, telling him nothing except that someone was there to see him. Danny came through the back door in a gray sweatshirt with dirt on the knees of his jeans and stopped when he saw who was standing in his living room. He stood completely still for a moment. Then he said, "You got my letters." "I got your letters," Springsteen said. Danny nodded slowly, as if confirming something he had always theoretically believed, but had not been entirely sure about until this moment. Then he said, "All of them?" "All 93. Danny looked at the floor for a second. Then he looked up. "I wasn't sure you were real," he said. "Like, I knew you were real, but I wasn't sure you were a real person." Springsteen said, "I'm a real person." They sat in the living room for 2 hours. Carol made sandwiches. Beth came home from a friend's house and stood in the doorway staring for approximately 30 seconds before sitting down and joining the conversation as if nothing unusual was happening, because she was 6 and the world had not yet taught her that this was unusual. Springsteen asked Danny about the baseball team and about school and about what songs he had been listening to. Danny asked Springsteen questions about how songs got written, whether they came all at once or in pieces, whether it was hard to play the same song hundreds of times without it losing something. Springsteen said sometimes it was hard. He said the trick was finding someone in the crowd who was hearing it for the first time and playing it for them. Before he left, Springsteen gave Danny a guitar. Not a child's guitar, not a toy, but a real acoustic guitar. A Martin, with a note tucked inside the case that said, "For Danny, keep writing, BS." He also gave Carol his personal phone number and told her to call if Danny needed anything. She kept the number in her address book for 11 years without using it, until Danny graduated from high school, at which point she called the number, which went to a voicemail, and left a message saying that Danny had graduated and was going to study music education at the University of Nebraska, and that she thought he would want to know. Springsteen's office called back the following day and arranged for a full scholarship, anonymously, through a foundation that did not carry his name. Danny Kowalczyk graduated from the University of Nebraska in 1993. He returned to Ainsworth and took a job teaching music at the same elementary school he had attended as a child. He has taught there for over 30 years. He still has the Martin guitar. He still has the note. Every year, on the first day of school, he tells his students one thing before he teaches them anything else. He tells them that music is not decoration. He tells them that it is not background noise or entertainment or something you put on while you are doing something else. He tells them that it is the thing you reach for when the thing you are feeling is too large for ordinary words. He tells them that this is not a small thing. This is the whole thing. He does not tell them about the 93 letters, or about the man who drove 18 hours to knock on a door in Nebraska. That is a story he keeps for himself, for the moments when he needs to remember that someone heard him when he was 9 years old and thought he was talking to no one. There is a detail about those 93 letters that Danny has only spoken about once. It is not dramatic. It is the kind of detail that only matters if you understand what it cost. Every Sunday for nearly 2 years, Danny sat at the kitchen table and wrote. After church, after lunch, in the hour before his mother started dinner. He did it in the same chair his father had always sat in, at the same table where the family had eaten together every evening before Robert drove home from a hardware store and did not arrive. Danny chose that chair deliberately. He was not conscious of the choice at first, but somewhere around the 30th letter, he understood what he was doing. He was sitting in his father's chair and writing to someone who had given him words for what the chair now meant, filling the silence with something that went somewhere, even if that somewhere was only a filing office in New York that processed thousands of letters a month. It went somewhere. That was enough. Carol Kowalczyk kept every copy of every letter. Danny had not told her he was doing this, making carbon copies on the sheets of carbon paper he had found in the back of his father's desk drawer, the kind Robert had used for his invoices when he did odd jobs on weekends. He pressed down firmly on every letter. He kept the copies in a shoebox under his bed. Carol found the shoebox when Danny left for college. She read every letter in order over a single evening, sitting in Robert's chair at the kitchen table. By the time she finished, it was past midnight. She called Danny the next morning and told him she had found them. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I didn't want to lose what I said to him." Carol has kept the shoebox. It sits on the top shelf of her closet in the house on Birchwood Lane, next to a photograph of Robert taken the summer before he died, squinting into the sun in the backyard, a baseball in his hand. Danny visits every Thanksgiving. He always sits in his father's chair. He always stays a little longer than he planned. The Martin guitar that Springsteen gave him hangs on the wall of his classroom at the elementary school in Ainsworth, next to the whiteboard, where every student who has ever passed through that room has seen it without knowing the full story behind it. Some of them ask. Danny tells them a version, that someone gave it to him when he was young, that it was a kindness he has tried to pass forward ever since. He does not name Springsteen. He does not need to. The guitar is not the point of the story. The point is that someone heard him when he was 9 years old and thought no one was listening. The point is that pressing down hard enough leaves a mark, even when you cannot see it. The point is the chair at the kitchen table, the Sunday afternoons, the carbon paper in his father's desk drawer. The point is that he kept writing. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that their voice matters. even when they think no one is listening. Have you ever written a letter you never expected to be answered? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to ring the notification bell for more stories about the moments that remind us why music exists.